Greetings, future fossils. This is Michael Garfield welcoming you to another episode of the podcast that explores our place in time. One of the most interesting works of science fiction I have ever read, Olaf Stapledon's Last and First Men and the Star Maker, a radium age diptych that went on to inspire minds like Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, even H.P. Lovecraft, is a kind of speculative deep space trip from the 1930s in which the reader is progressively zoomed out into wider and wider arenas of consciousness and activity. And I am not surprised that this highly influential, visionary work of science fiction is what ultimately linked me up with David Bronner, the Cosmic Engagement Officer for Dr. Bronner's Soap Company. The grandson of Dr. Emanuel Bronner, David seems to me like he is living in perfect alignment with the legacy left in his hands, using the resources and the influence of his international brand to effect positive impact on the world at large. I suppose that it should come as no surprise to anyone who's read the label on a bottle of Dr. Bronner's soap that this is a family and an enterprise concerned primarily with the healing and benefit of the human species. But I was nonetheless totally surprised and delighted to realize what a clever and insightful person David is when I had the opportunity to talk with him on a MAPS Psychedelic Science Benefit Bay cruise I played music on last April. I had just been talking to my scientific mentor and Future Fossils guest, Dr. Bruce Damer, about his research on the origins of life on the so-called progenote, that prototypical organic goo that preceded the first living cell. Bruce and company's radical research indicates that life began in a warm, shallow pond as layers of lipids and other organic material deposited, dried out, re-wet, dried out again, and left what was essentially a foamy soap scum as the vehicle and medium of what would become all life on Earth. So I thought that David would get a kick out of learning that the latest science suggests that we are, in fact, not only all one, as it says on his bottles, but that life indeed began in soap. And thus began the first of several conversations that we've had, and every one of them inspires me more. I know that I've been doing lots of episodes lately on trauma and healing and the power of psychedelic plant medicines. Well, folks, here's one more, because this is the time we are living in. And as this show is dedicated to the greater human arc, that vast landscape of time and our migration across it, I would be remiss if I did not include the stories David Bronner has for us today on his family's legacy of restorative and healing work, as well as some of his own personal accounts of social action, foam-inspired transformation, and psychedelic healing. But first, I'd like to take a moment to thank each of the new Patreon supporters this month: Kieran Murahi, Rennie Bott, Maya Huffman, and Barbara Martins. Thank you all so much for joining the exclusive inner circle. Still fewer than 100 people that have access to new and exclusive episodes, some unreleased material, subscriber-only musical releases. And as soon as I hit one round 100 Patreon supporters, I will also get to cracking on my long-promised psychedelic coloring book for all of you, which is actually nearly halfway done already. I've also got a lot of awesome episodes en route this spring, and some of those will be available to Patreon supporters early. So if you enjoy this show and you would like to help me keep it going, roll on over to Patreon. Even if you do not have $1 to your name, there's plenty of free stuff there for you anyway. A token of my gratitude for listening to Future Fossils. I'd also like to thank all 57 of you who have rated and reviewed this show on Apple Podcasts. If you think this world's better off with future fossils than it is without it, your reviews help turn on strangers to the show, new people that could one day be significant to you, who knows, or may already be in that weird 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon way where all of us are intimately interwoven unbeknownst to us. I've watched a slow but steady uptick in the downloads of this show and know that it's because of your reviews, you're sharing it with friends. I thank you deeply on behalf of everyone who wouldn't have discovered it without you. Now everyone get comfortable. Give it up for David Bronner, CEO of Dr. Bronner's Soaps and model of right livelihood for business people everywhere. Enjoy. Dude, it's so great to finally have you on the show. I know we've been playing phone tag about this for months at this point.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. Really appreciate our connection and going deep on Stapledon and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So just for folks, that's Olaf Stapledon, the early 20th century science fiction author whose works Last and First Men and The Star Maker, David and I connected over on the MAPS Psychedelic Science Bay Cruise back in April. I was tickled to find out that you are a sci-fi aficionado and that I should have known that you have a preference for sweeping cosmic visions of unifying consciousness. But yeah.
No, for sure, man. And it actually we bonded initially over origin of life, kind of, and then, and that led, just the different theories and, metabolism first or DNA or RNA first. And then, just all the different cool knowledge and insights that's coming up. But then, of course, like all that's awesome, but where are we going? And, Stapledon, mind and the cosmos, like what is, life and mind and soul and spirit, and who's bigger than Stapledon? And it was so sweet to bond. And right, so just like the future history of humanity over the course of 5 billion years. Pretty dope. Yeah.
As somebody who has the education and the resources and the skin in the game, you're somebody that I see implementing this stuff in your life, which I find really fascinating because when I go off on a tear with my dad, who's a very practical, business-oriented dude, about the cosmic vision and how that orients all of my activity in this life, and my sense of activism and the way that I participate in it and all of that, and like how that overview informs our daily lives. I feel like it's lost on a lot of people. It's somewhat hard to reconcile the Teilhard de Chardin vision level stuff with what am I going to do today? And you're somebody that clearly gives an enormous amount of thought to that. So I'd love to hear how you feel like those reconcile or integrate in your world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's funny, in a way, like my granddad versus my dad. I mean, my granddad was all about the all one, spaceship Earth, planetariums are the future temples of humanity. And if we all can, witness the majesty of creation and how vanishingly insignificant and small we are, that our divisions are, to realize our transcendent unity across religious and ethnic divides, and unite the spaceship Earth, lightning-like. So that was my granddad's whole mission and vision, but kind of lost touch with, and in some ways, his immediate family responsibility of being a responsible father. And, my dad, not to save the world, but coming from a lot of tragedy himself. Ovens of the Holocaust behind him that claimed his parents, and his wife, my dad's mom, died when my dad was 2, and just a lot of stuff. But my dad came up in a series of foster homes. My granddad would check in and financially supported him. But my dad, coming up with my dad, who oversaw the bulk soap production for Bronner's, but really had a difficult relationship with my granddad for most of his life, although later they reconciled, and my dad did a lot of work and my granddad chilled out. But my dad wanted nothing to do with that cosmic vision, wanted nothing to do with all one, but was just the most moral, upright dude, just taking care of his family, us, making this incredible home, just in his community, just doing like not for no reason other than it's the right thing and just so righteous. So I feel like just really blending the two and understanding like that escape is like that the cosmic invasion can be an escape, but at the same time I am the cosmic engagement officer, and I do value and think that it is, you know, my granddad was fucking 100% correct, and that, you know, it's about the one love, the all one vision, and you know, just incarnating that in our everyday life of absurdity and suffering and fun, and trying to make it more fun and more light and more sweet and more awesome in this galactic sector of the cosmos. You know, but and actually then my Iboga trip was a lot about my dad and my granddad. Well,
when did that happen? When were you? I think last time we spoke, you had just gotten back from that. That was... Yeah.
That was wow. You know, I mean, I have a friend who was, you know, it was like, okay, like this could be really helpful for you, but guess what? It's going to be really helpful for me because I'm going to go with you, and who's helping who, and, you know, anyways, it was amazing. And, you know, just soul mind blowing, heart opening, very grueling, awesome and incredible. But so, yeah, I mean, it's like well, I don't know where to start. It was a lot, but on the tip of the therapist shaman, and there was a few of them, but one of them was in the Huichol tradition, and the Huichol tribe has kind of been carrying the peyote ceremonies for, you know, 10,000 plus years. And there's a Huichol bracelet that I got gifted, even though we were working with Iboga. It was like, you know, like a lot of the Huichol kind of knowledge and traditions, and really helpful, and really, but then also within Iboga, like a lot, I mean, just like we had a really good sweat the night before to prepare, and kind of calling in the ancestors and being, you know, checking in with relations and checking in with my dad and my granddad in particular. So in the experience itself was what you kind of will read about, like that kind of karmic judgment day life review deal. I mean, that went down, and like all these episodes of your life, you know, like where you kind of fucked up or oblivious or just people were hurt and whatever, you're just like, you know, just rapidly going through it and understanding exactly how that went, you know, in like a fucking 360 view, and feeling it and just like kind of moving through stuff. But then like checking in with people, family, friends, and their laughter and their smiles, and honoring them and their light. And yeah, and then especially with my dad, it was just massive. It was just a massive experience of like appreciating him and just remembering him. And he died, my granddad died in 97, my dad died in 98. But just all his joy and achievement in life, and just really appreciating and understanding like what he did, it has made possible everything we're doing, and has inspired everything we're doing. And he didn't have a role model like I have, which is him. And his power animal is an eagle, and we have this crazy fire truck that blasts foam, which he did so many amazing things, but one of them was develop firefighting foam that's used in structure and forest fires today. But he developed for Hollywood, the Forest Service, when they're testing it to make sure it didn't kill, you know, like the plants and animals. My dad's like, wow, it looks like a blizzard hit this forest, which is part of why you use firefighting foam instead of water, is you can actually see where you drop the foam in a very low visibility situation. It also wets out water, lower surface tension. It keeps it on vertical surfaces, and it's a lot of and insulates against radiant heat. But it looks like snow. So I grew up on blasting foam and commercial sets and movie sets, and I grew up in the LA area, but also just like blasting foam everywhere, you know. And my dad was awesome. We go do like the old folks home and the deaf kid school, and just such joy with this foam, just growing up with it, having it in my front yard with our friends, just come over, hey, we're gonna blast foam on each other with an 1.5-inch fire hose, and just like an example of how awesome he was, and like just really appreciating connecting with him, and just, you know, moving through regrets about things. Like he died when I was 25, I just turned, and, you know, just wasn't where I'm at now, and just kind of, you know, regretting how I wasn't showing up for him as in whatever ways, but then also like, hey, don't worry. And right now I am like totally appreciating his magnitude. And so it was like, getting a lot of time. I mean, it was like just like super fucking downloads of all kinds, like just like high level, like fucking like, okay, read the karmic program. Okay. And just like high level, like dense visual imagery, like communicating and, just like, whoa, like feeling like other dimensional, like presences and just kind of intersecting. But then, so like one vision of my dad was him like kind of in soccer, because he coached us in soccer. We always played on the Eagles and just had some incredible experiences with him playing soccer growing up. And, he didn't ever play soccer in his life and just became super coach. But at one point there's like this picture of him flashes by and like I'm in our old home and I'm checking out the Time Life World War II series that he had. So he's a World War II buff. And then like this image of him kind of coming by, like kind of this ecstatic expression on his face, like, charged, like, like laughing, and it's just like, and it kind of flashes by, and then the spirit world, like, okay, like, you're missing a lot, bring this one back, bam, and it's my dad, with juxtaposed with the World War II Time Life, totally ecstatic, star burst on his shoulder, then like, like just pay attention, your dad is a favorite son of like, the cosmos, I don't know on what level, but just like, fucking pay attention to how dope he is. And like, and just experience a lot. Like he was born in, like he did have this conversion experience and he impacted in a very fundamentalist way, but really understanding it as 100% pure. He fucking won 100% pure grace. Like he got it. And like a seeker, like his dad before him, and just, and then like a red like goddess, like fairy lady, like kind of like as I'm like entering deeper into this, from his heart like shoots an arrow, like a cupid bow, just boom, 4 hearts on it, and it's like, dude, stay in there, because I'm also getting a little weirded out now, because it's like my dad, but now it's on, right? And I'm like, dude, just get the arrow and like get the tip, and it's the most beautiful golden light, like love. But then I'm kind of like this anxiety, like fucking energy, like cancels or whatever, and I just spin out like, dude, you just fucking flailed on the most epic scale, whatever. It took me a while to like get back, but anyways, got the tip, as my buddy Patrick was able to affirm for me, which I gave him this huge hug, because I realized he was like my dad. He's like a life artist. Really appreciate my dad as like a life artist, and conveying that to my buddy. Then the World War II, like the juxtaposition of joy and fucking, coming off the trauma, generational trauma of the war, juxtaposed, like good and evil, and just this like, but just this joy, like, dude, this is it, like something about like the phoenix fucking being born, which is like on our fire truck in my dad's honor. It's like got this huge, beautiful phoenix that we go around blasting foam on people. But just realizing him as the phoenix and as like so huge. And I've had other downloads on that tip, but it was just really direct and magnificent. And yeah, there's deeper deals, and just feeling like only us can really honor our fathers and our mothers and our ancestors. Like we're God, we're in position to fucking see, like only us, like that part of God or that part of reality. And like just feeling like, oh, when I see it, it's like some like sweetness, like, oh, click, boom, that's in the Akashic record. Like all these sweet moments like you experience, like kind of being taken into the books, there's this feeling like my dad and me, and then my granddad, and the trauma, and like, like the like I'm, here to honor, like the generation honors the prior generation, kind of going back, and like something essential about that going on. And but then on my granddad's tip, and it was also a very Christian kind of experience, like just like not in a literal fundamentalist way, but like kind of super mystical, tile art style, and Stapledon. Funny, like this all like was like ridiculous, like on this tip, but like that the one and the many, and that like fucking like the sun is the creation, it is life, the light made flesh, and all the worlds and all the stars, like all the life, all generations rising and falling, dying and being reborn, and suffering and living and laughing and dying, and that all is on the cross, and all is like, all these worlds. And so that's the whole Stapledonian tile art, like, and it was just. And then I remember at one point, like I'm on Earth, like I'm kind of check like Earth, and like all the life artists and activists against the machine, like, struggling, we're trying to fucking do it, come on, and like tapping into the other worldly presences, or like, come on, this planet's on the cusp, kind of like in Stapledon's Mad World, kind of the Mad World's like can we like influence them and get them to like, you know, not fucking implode. And yeah, so anyways, and then at a certain point, my granddad's whole position over here smiling, and I'm like, just like, you know, certain point, like fucking peace on earth breaks out, like just kind of this golden light, like shines. And
so there's so much in here, but I want to point to a couple of things. One is that the past is alive now. And I feel like that's something that's so more obvious now, where you've got your entire like Facebook timeline and your Google search history and all that stuff is following us around, you know, in a way that like, you're only a couple of years older than me, I think. Like, we're both within the cohort of people that remember people talking about stuff going on your permanent record before the web, and like this thought that somewhere there's a file drawer with all this shit in. But it's like, but now we know this. Now we know that we're carrying this history or this data collection that we've created around, and also that it's about so much more than just the inherited genetics, that there's that trauma gets passed down too in markers on the DNA. And so I feel like, you know, when you hearing about this stuff, and I'm not in the best position to talk about the science of this, but I know that there are research papers out there on how entheogen experiences do change us epigenetically, and that the scientific research at MAPS and stuff like this that gets into using psychedelics to heal trauma, that a part of this seems to be that it actually does work on us at a molecular level, where the inherited trauma of being a grandchild of the Holocaust or whatever is actually that there's an actual material component to that, and it's not merely like internal and psychological. And I just get this image listening to what you're talking about, that in order to work in the world, it's almost like a principle of magic, that you start in the middle. And like, you heal yourself, you heal your family relations, because like all of us are walking around under the burden of all of this accumulated stuff that we've inherited, all of the trauma, all of the grief that has been unprocessed by the previous organisms in our lineage, and it's still hanging in there. And that if we really want to fulfill that vision, it's like we got to start in the middle and heal from the middle out.
Yeah, it's generational trauma. It's fucking the demons ricocheting down the generations, and especially that male aggression, you know, like the coming down and just radiating out, and like just being able to fucking process and exercise that in our own souls, right? And all that plant medicine work again, and that was a big part too, like the Huichol and like these plant medicine traditions, like this work that we need to do, all of us need to do, but these sacred traditions and like that have almost been exterminated, like have the power to heal us and save us and, you know, work that trauma out.
I didn't get to do it this year, but I had some friends that went and did the foam experience at your Burning Man camp, and like, just so people understand, like, I feel like even as just a work of performance art, this is really powerful. But the way it was, like, people are led through this chute into a freight car, like they're being led into the gas chambers, and they're being explained this, right? Mm-hmm. So this is, and then instead of gas coming out, it's soap foam, and everybody gets a bath, and it's this, you know, I see it in terms of like the research on post-traumatic stress disorder, how they lead individuals back into the memory of the trauma, like where it started, and then they show them that it's safe, and then that memory is reconsolidated, and so they're able to go through their lives having lived through this thing without it being totally intolerable. And it seems like that foam experience at Burning Man is working on us culturally in the same way that like MDMA works on individuals in therapy setting. So I don't know, you speak to that.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, the foam already is kind of an avatar of psychedelics. You know, it's like you blast foam on the world, it just transforms it, you know, and you know, so, but it's, to your point, so I don't know if was it this year or was it last year that your buddy?
It was this year, yeah.
This year, see, this is amazing. Okay, so last year, that really came to a head. So yeah, I mean, just really the organic history here is, my got Dr. Bronner soap. My dad developed firefighting foam. When my dad and my granddad and my dad died, quick succession, we had to get rid of the foam and just concentrate on the soap business. And then 10 years later, I was going through a lot in my life and just really appreciate my dad. I was like, Pop, how do you fucking do it? Raising a family and run a company, and then built, just remembering the joy of foam, and built one of the foam machines, that he designed late in life, and brought it to the burn. This is 2009, and it was just clearing out blocks, just people were just what, and then we did the cardinal sin. We violated Prime Directive, had an acre foot of turquoise body paint water on the playa, but we're just we're bringing this water, this is, I'm okay, this year this happens, next year we got to fucking figure out the gray water. So then we built a big bathtub, that we can pack people into, and blast foam, and then has a 1,000-gallon tank on the bottom. And then that went to the sexy plexis. So the sexy plexis are what you're talking about, that two 8x20 trailers end to end. And, we just kind of people come into the foam chamber of joy and celebration, pack them in, get them just really hyped up, and then plum, you get hit with the foam, and it's this beautiful ecstatic rite and ritual. So that's my personal association only, right? Or just coming up, that's just what it is. But then we had, and I'd kind of heard a couple of times that association of the gas chambers and Auschwitz, and and haven't really thought it's a couple of random people kind of having that association, the Nazis would give you a towel and soap, and then, here's your, that was their trick to keep everyone calm right before gassing them. And then this lady wrote this incredible creative nonfiction essay called Seife, and Seife is German for soap, and it's a play on safe and not feeling safe and how unsafe this experience was for her, and this is 3 years ago. So she had this very intense traumatic experience in the foam, just exactly as you said, just completely generational trauma, holy, what the fuck, Bronner's thinking, and so she's just incredible as to engaging with my granddad and with us, and reaches out to I think my brother initially, and then to me, and her name's Allie, and we just had this really deep connection. I'm like, holy shit, well, here's my story about all that, and whoa. But then just starting to talk to people my Jewish friends and anybody from Europe, they're like, oh yeah, dude, totally had that association. But it's fucking love's answer to all that. And but realizing that some people do get stuck and it's not a fucking good experience at all. It's fucking terrible. So really processing through it with her is okay, well, how do we acknowledge this dimension without triggering it, in people who's not having it? So, and then that was the year, this is 2 years ago, that we did Reformation, and we always put foam in our camp name. We changed our name, so we were the Reformation, and we did this whole kind of Demeter Persephone, regenerative agriculture, regenerating agriculture and regenerating culture of psychedelics, and linking the Demeter Persephone, Persephone's goddess of agriculture, but also the kykeon, the drink, the initiate's drink, which is basic natural LSD that Hoffman was in on, and just a lot of Hoffman downloads. And as you get in line, we can kind of have you for an hour to download on you. So we're just downloading all those Albert Hoffman and regenerative organic agriculture and stuff.
It's a captive audience, yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. My granddad had to, put his message on the bottle. You forgot your magazine in the bathroom, but now we got you in our line of the phone. So that year too, coincidentally, I'd gone back to Germany, and we actually go quite a bit, and we actually have our own company. We launched in 2008 in Germany and Israel, which is our 60th anniversary. And the Nazis, our factory was Aryanized in southern Germany in 40, and my great-grandparents were gassed in 42. And I went to visit the old home, and the German government, there's some cool artist, had the idea 10 years ago to commemorate all the Jewish victims of the Holocaust with what they call stumble stones, whatever in German. And it's these bronze plaques in the sidewalk, have your name, date of birth, date of deportation, and date of murder. And in some neighborhoods, there's just a ton of them, and it's it's just overwhelming. And so in front of our house, it's my great grandparents and a great aunt, cousin, but just being there and thinking about my granddad as a kid, just playing in the streets, and just having this intense communion moment. And then getting in the car and going around the corner, and there's this like really nice park with like this wall. And I'm like, whoa, what's all these trees and stuff? And I'm like, what's that? And I get out, and it's this graveyard, like German graveyard, not Jewish, just German graveyard. And just having this feeling of like intense like pathos and like communion, solidarity with their Jewish brothers and sisters, and like everybody, and like not that many Nazis were in here, like not that matters, but I mean, it does, but like just a lot of the Germans were fucking victims, like everyone, just feeling like just this generational fucking tragedy and around the world. And my wife's grew up in Taipei, and her dad was like a baby on her grandmother's back fleeing Mao to Taiwan, and just the massive fucking slaughter of a generation, just feeling this like solidarity. So just having that experience, and then in our camp, so we took a picture of those stumble stones, and it said, anybody who's experiencing generational trauma, our hearts are with you, and hold space for you, and for you to move through to the present moment of celebration and joy behind, just like a sweet, not too prominent, but, just nice acknowledgement. So then Allie came by, like, I think it was Wednesday, and I was like dosed in already. It was like maybe an hour, and just like the sun's going down. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll come show you through. So I'm like taking her through. And so now I'm walking up on our situation, like with her vision, like really seeing it as she is. And like, whoa, like, wow, like the association of like the gas chambers and whatever, but also just calm too, just in a calm. And then Dan is like up on the decks, just kind of practicing, like just ripping some music, and sun's going down, and Demeter's Tree of Life is holding space, and Alex and Allison Gray were light painting, not currently, but they're Star Dancers, a 30-foot mural in our space. And I was a little confused, like it was like dead, how they do like kind of anatomical. So it's all these figures and dance and ecstatic dance and processing, and just enter this space of just dance. And I'm fucking dancing with my ancestors, like all that trauma, they're all fucking with me. I'm with them. Like we're just fucking dancing. There's not like, no, you're not, this is what we're doing. Like we're dancing with you. Like it was just this massive, this experience of like, just like, whoa, just processing that, and not in this heavy way, or like, I mean, yeah, it was heavy, but now it's a fucking party. It's joyous. Not like party, like a calm, like fucking kuj, deep, sun shining, like the star, like just.
That thing about it being like the transformation from suffering into pain that's like held, but it doesn't cause the suffering anymore. It reminds me, I'm reading James P. Cars's book, Finite and Infinite Games. And like one of the things that stuck with me that I just like keep thinking about, talking about, is how he talks about culture is an infinite game. There's no winner. You win by playing. The goal of the game is just to keep the game going.
Yes.
Society is a finite game where there are winners and losers. You get to a point, and like the goal of the game is just to preserve the history of the game, is just to keep the people in power, they've earned it through their sacrifice, so we enshrine them in legend and myth, and we give, they've earned their merits, and we all agree that these merits mean something. But what Kars was saying in that is that the finite game of society is actually, it's happening within the infinite game of culture. That society is a culture that has forgotten that it is play. So it's like it's taking itself really seriously. And so like the difference between cultural activity as a life-enhancing, positive, everyone wins kind of thing, and cultural activity as a life-destroying thing where some people win at other people's expense, is the seriousness with which people play the game. It's like if you think there's a finite game with winners and losers, that's what you're going to create. That's what you're going to reinforce. But as soon as you have that cosmic engagement, like as soon as you see society's role within the larger human story, like your society with its heroes and its history, and you zoom out to the point where you can see that it's just one of many societies, and that all of them are even just bubbles within this larger foam of human cultural activity, then suddenly, like, it's not about getting to this end point where we have replaced this shit with a utopia or whatever. It's just about constantly allowing your heart to break open and reveal some new depth that motivates you to participate in this even more enthusiastically. And like, that feels like the edge that we're dancing on here.
Yeah, man. And I was just flashing on Stapledon's account of the Divine Boy, who like gets caught, like just an amazing figure, like a kind of prophetic figure who's like also very critical of his society, but he's clambering up in the mountains and gets caught in a storm and is going down. And on one level, he's like, dude, this fucking sucks, big fucking balls, but then he like goes out to the calm yet exultant standpoint of the Star Maker, where a young lad with promise came to an unfortunate end, but somehow was still excellent within the wider spheres of the wider game and the cause, and then somehow had now the power to like clamber out of the fucking snow situation and come back into the culture with this like stop taking all this shit too serious. It is a game, but it is a serious game to play, and but don't ruin it. With fucking taking it too serious and like fucking up the game, but nonetheless, it's like fucking life and death and deadly serious, but it's also a dream, and I don't know. But yeah, man.
So this part links, I think, through to like, I had one thing I really wanted to ask you about today, and I think we can get there through the following segue. Okay, so like, I had an ayahuasca ceremony a few years ago where I was thinking about stars, and specifically what like the habitable zone around a star, which is like, they call it the Goldilocks Zone, where things are at the right temperature to support life, and the chemical processes can all happen. And there was originally astronomers were looking for stars that were the same size roughly as our star, around which to find Earth-like worlds that might support life. But they redid the calculations and realized that a much larger star has a much larger habitable zone. If you think about like a heat gradient coming off of the star, that there's like that gradient is so much longer on a big one. So they're like, actually, our star, it's like really bizarre that our star has a livable planet on it because it's so small. And like, the bigger the star is, the more you could have like 20 Earths in some of these red giant solar systems. And I was like, that revelation came to me at the same time that I was watching this guy puke his guts out on ayahuasca, just like going, like, just so much work. This dude was like, it felt like he was purging for everyone in the whole group. And then at the end of, like, all of us were feeling really bad for this dude, but then at the end of the ceremony,
like way beyond everybody.
At the end of the ceremony, the leaders of the ceremony turned on some like reggae, and we got us all up to move and dance and like move the energy around. And that guy cut a fucking rug. Like, that guy who was suffering the most, or like processing the most, was like more liberated than all the rest of us at the end of it. And I was thinking, I was like, there's a relationship here, which is that like, the wider your frame of reference, the more energy you can move, the more people you can serve, the more you receive. Like, it's like the bigger you're able to like work open this tunnel and become a channel for greater and greater service, your habitable zone is that much bigger. And it was almost like a physical equation came to me, where it's like, if you want to succeed in this world, serve the largest possible audience that you can. Find some way to improve the lives of the greatest number of people at once. And so there's like this through line here between, I think, like psychedelic healing, and then like your work as a cosmic engagement officer, and like activism and service, and really specifically like what I've been thinking about recently, because of this explosion of interest in cryptocurrencies and like watching people become affluent who thought that they had no hope for affluence. And so they're like locked into a system where they're just trying to make their own two ends meet. So they don't even have the bandwidth to like think about how they're going to help people. And I've been thinking about this, like, there's like this surge of financial energy into this system, And yet, like, very few of us have a sort of like a grounding or a basis or like an education in how to manage wealth as an act of service, you know? So like, I don't know, that's a jewel of, that's like a dodecahedron of ideas, but like basically that thought of like, you know, that like stepping out into that wider framework, and like that seems to be a big part of how you detach from the seriousness of your own life and like engage in what you just called life art, like being a life artist in service. And I don't know, that's the
oh no, that's the pull. Yeah. You gotta let it flow, and then you grow. You know, like you just like whatever you have, like you give, and then but being responsible so that you know you're taking care of your own health and your organizational health and your company health, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, we only prosper if everybody prospers, if our whole earth prospers. And I like that also, like, kind of, you know, within the game. I mean, it is real. I mean, there are stakes, and we should struggle for the light and for more joy and freedom and for sure. And yeah, I mean, that's tough to teach. And I'm fortunate that I was taught and somehow got it. And thank you, entheogens, for helping me see and kicking my ass and opening me up and like wanting to, like, you know, I mean, one of my big foundational experiences was I was in a gay trans club in Amsterdam in '95, and that's when I got like died 5 different ways into the light, and you know, and a big one. Wow, man, there's a lot in that one. I don't know, but kind of like initially actually having this kind of initial impression, like I was still kind of, I guess, my homophobic, whatever self, but was having this anxiety reaction as like guys were coming up and dirty dancing me and whatever. And like getting into this like kind of rape fantasy of like, oh, I'm going to get raped. Like, you know, I was on LSD and MDMA and just like, and knowing, okay, that's not happening, but then just kind of going with it, just to, I don't know. And then there's other shit in my life that like, I just knew I was in like initiation space or whatever, but like kind of like, or not in that kind of not high knowledge, but just knew on a cellular level. It's like you go where you need to go. So I'm going there, and I'm like, okay, now this is happening. So what's the least karmic consequence for all involved? Like, how does everybody sin the least as we move through this? You know, and it's like, just surrender, dude. Just let it go. You know, and then like boom, just like die. You know, all of a sudden, heart blows open, fucking light. And like embraced by the goddess in the dark into the light and move through there. And that was my, you know, threshold into, so now I'm like, okay, well, good choice in your paranoid universe, dude, but that didn't happen. But anyways, God, I'm dancing right now. Rape is happening, fucking suffering and murder and the worst. Like, well, what's up? And just challenging. And then all of a sudden I'm like nothing. I'm like just microscoped and nothing. And it's a self of everything doing to the self what this is what it is, and there's no answer, you know, just like hush. And then seeing Jesus, like to the point, seeing Jesus with his back to me over there, not complaining about it, not trying to explain it, just stepping up and like, you know, whoa, yeah, crazy, but how can I help? You know, like how can I be of service? How can I rock it? And I'm like, whoa, I want to be like that. And then having like further massive, like just realizing my then girlfriend, now wife, just how jealous I'd been of her adventures in Asia and just all these erotic adventures she'd had, and just how I like the project of caging her and like limiting her, and just seeing that and her soul force in compassion and eros, and like, dude, better you fucking die, you know, get the fuck out of the way, what are you doing, you know, and like just dying away from her and seeing like this like millions of like dark beings like on the light, but now the light just explodes and embraces me, and all is forgiven and all is just love. And then Helena, who's this gay guy I met earlier in the week and had a nice connect with, is cross-dressed in the club, and I'm in this like hot cold game with like the deep soul, and I'm like, well, I just got married to Chris forever, you know, so I don't got to deal with this dilemma. And, you know, then it's like, wrong answer, dude. Like, you're back in the hole, you know? And like, I'm like, no, actually, why would you not get down with anybody who's coming down to embrace and get down, you know? And like, yeah, light blows open again. And so huge, you know, for like years after, I mean, it took a long time to integrate that stuff. I was like borderline schizo, full blown spiritual emergency. And now I have more access to it. And actually been recently thinking about that experience, because earlier, like, I'm definitely feeling like in a liminal transformational space, and was, realizing Persephone, like the archetype of Hades, the dominant Persephone myth that anchors the Eleusinian mystery. So Hades kidnaps Persephone, and the rape of Persephone, it's often portrayed in art. But realizing, like, wait, she chose to go, and like, I'm just like, who knows that? And I did all this, and I got this interesting set of books of like people who know on that level, and that she is the queen of the underworld and chose to sacrifice and regenerate the world. But that our soul, like archetypally, the experience that it loses, that is like the numinous, when you resist, it's a raping, you feel as rape, until you surrender and go. And anyways, whatever.
That whole thing about the rape of Persephone, and that being like a later addition to the story, and that earlier on it was a matter of choice, I find is really fascinating, because like on the same blade where we have pain and suffering, or we have culture and society, it's all about the limited identity. And I remember, the difference way back in like 2008, the difference between my first and second DMT trip was the first time I had no idea what to expect, and I went in completely open and surrendered to it. But the second time I was like, oh, I think I know what's going on here. So I went in with like a program or an idea, like questions, like an experiment. And the difference wasn't so much my curiosity or a directedness, I think, as it was that in order to hold a particular investigative attitude, I did not allow myself to change in that experience. And so like the part of me that was like trying to concentrate and focus in order to remain coherent was actually an obstruction. And so like the healing intervention, or like the angelic encounter of that first experience, was rendered differently. I felt like I was being sort of like encapsulated and kicked out of heaven by an immune system that was like, so it was like, instead of surgery, it was violation. And I had the sense that like the difference between heaven and hell is just like how hard you're trying. That's basically all it boils down to, is like, if you're gonna like roll out of a moving car, like they do in the movies, then you got to be loose when you hit the ground. And like, if
I had two associations, but the more relevant is Jacob's Ladder. And if you've seen Jacob's Ladder, it's basically it's an amazing movie, and it took me a while to figure out. It's like, Tibetan Book of the Dead, Bardo state, kind of dying process, death trip. But the chiropractor is kind of this angel kind of figure who is the constant between his shifting worlds. And for people who don't know, I guess he's a Vietnam vet. He's having all these flashbacks, but then he's just very disturbing as he flips across. But at a certain point, the chiropractor says, he's kind of explaining like what's really happening in a way. And he's like, when you're holding on, it's like demons are ripping at you. But when you let go, it's like angels freeing you, and this is beautiful. It's a hard movie, but it's so beautiful at the end if you see it correct. I mean, it's just so whoa. But the other, anyways, that's mostly the other association was in my iboga, like just feeling like all the awesome fucking experience. It's like a more traditional, like I said, Christian universe, like, but also like just all the awesome shit is here, like kind of up here, and the one in the many, but like all your, and then here's all the stupid, blame, bad, horrible, and just kind of like it just separates, like kind of like the beautiful smiles and sweetness and all those moments, and and just like all the moments and events of life. And I mean, I seriously had like, my experience was so I felt like this is just the experience people have, and this is where the Christian cosmology came from. It's like from this kind of experience where it's just all like, you're fucking going through a grueling Judgment Day life, whatever review, and then just seeing like all the beautiful moments and all the fucking shitty moments, and then just how that all kind of separates, and how
it's almost trite how like this thing about it being like your external conditions can remain totally the same, and yet like you're sitting in the same room and somebody's going through hell. I mean, I went through what I would consider hell recently, and it was like I knew the whole time, I was like, this is in my head. And when you're in that space to like
that doesn't really work.
Touch back to like we were talking about earlier about like the difference between like escapism versus engagement. It's like when I'm in that space, I feel like, okay, well, like I look around me and my whole life looks great, but it's not working. So maybe I should move, like maybe I should break up with my partner. Maybe I should, and I get like the anxiety results in these like insane decisions. And like I'm old enough now to recognize that thinking is nuts, because it actually what happened in this last case was like I got out of hell by just staying put, by being like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to hang out with this, I choose this, and that's where it's like the Chinese finger trap. Like you have to go into it in order to let it release.
Then or like the Sandgroff, like perinatal matrices, and you gotta like just stay with it. And in Jungian, like just stay in that dilemma, just stay in it, and transcendent is just let it alchemically cook till transformation happens. And you know what though? It's to kind of like your comment. I mean, there's like the superficial like analysis, and then there's the deeper what's going on. And so I'm just trying to like not make too many radical decisions and understanding like, things like holding position, navigating through. There's just a lot going on. Like I went through a real difficult year 1 year prior, and there's like kind of karmic echoes of each kind of on a higher octave. So not as difficult, but still like powerful. And I mean, it's been very transformational.
Well, I mean, honestly, a lot of this stuff, I feel like most of 2017, people are like, so how's it going? And I'm like, I can't even tell you. It's just like there's so much going on that we've crossed over the threshold of it being communicable in language, and it's just like it's better to just like attend to it than to try and explain it sometimes.
Yeah, no, totally.
So, what do you hope for this? What kind of a vision when you've got all of these projects and all of this enthusiasm? Which clearly I feel like enthusiasm is like a symptom of having a vision for the world that you want. So like, what is it that you're working toward with all of this? You've donated money to MAPS. You talked about some other business stuff before the call you're excited about, but like, where do you see it all heading and how?
Well, let's see. I mean, the two major passion projects are, psychedelics, integrating psychedelics and legally, and building out clinics and getting to a world where, you're 21 and you're not experienced. Well, come on, So, obviously that's massively important for the healing of the world. And so, the MAPS project is our primary focus, but, there's the Hefter and there's some efforts driving psilocybin, and of course ayahuasca is on fire, and the plant traditions generally. Ibogaine is massively important to integrate for the opiate addiction, and just in itself another massive plant tradition and medicine, and all of them. So that's a number one passion project. But then regenerative organic agriculture, transitioning our like industrial agriculture, like our chemical tillage intensive method of agriculture is just ripping fertility out of soil. It's like a finite resource. We're just ripping it out. And this has all kinds of ecosystem catastrophe associated with how we grow these commodity crops, most of which are animal feed and biofuel. It's not even food. And working hard with allies in animal welfare space to promote like more plant-based dietary choice or less and better meat. If you're going to eat meat, eat it from pasture-based livestock operations, which you can farm with animals in a regenerative fashion. If you look at a wild ecosystem, there is a sustainable balance of animal and plant life and how they interact. When we farm in nature's image, that can work and be sustainable. But right now we have all our food animals are in cages, 95% of them in factory farms, and this is horrific conditions, completely unsustainable. And so, integrating into mixed livestock, pasture cropping, ag system is crucial, and that's just a major part. Like our supply chains, like our coconut oil, our olive oil, our palm oil, all come from very high level regenerative organic systems, and we've been inspired by people doing that, and in turn trying to inspire that revolution. Yeah, I guess that's primarily it, trying to have a good time, growing the company to be able to, like you say, like the more energy, I mean, we're reaching some really good levels of the energy and firepower we can throw in. Oh, well, here's another one. I mean, it's a little, I guess, real-time political stuff, but the 2018 Florida ballot is going to have a ballot to restore voting rights to former felons. So Florida is one of 3 states that denies felons the right to vote. And there's like 1.5 million of them, most of them people of color. And obviously, if we get 1.5 million new registered, mostly Democratic voters in Florida, that's going to be very helpful to national policy and administrations and presidencies. And so that's going to be a huge fight. And we're not directly engaged, but contributing some firepower. Everyone's very excited.
Dude, because the last time we spoke, you were getting ready to do Catharsis on the Mall in Washington, D.C. And I saw on Facebook at some point, I saw you planting a hemp plant, like in the lawn of, like, was it the Capitol building or?
There's 2 of that. Like in 2009, we planted hemp seeds on the DEA's lawn, and they got arrested with shovels saying that American farmers shall grow hemp again, and reefer madness will be buried. So like when they confiscated it was like putting a stake in the vampire heart. And then I actually got arrested in front of the White House in a cage, harvesting hemp plants for their seeds and their nutritious oil, and yelling at Obama to allow American farmers to grow hemp again. But Catharsis, and then we legalized cannabis in DC in 2014, like not personally, but we contributed most of the financial resources. And then Adam Eidinger, our director of social action and just a rock star in DC, was campaign manager. So just and then what's great about DC is whatever you're doing locally is, the local media is talking to the national leadership. So obviously shifting cannabis policy and legalizing in DC is massive, and 90% African American, and of course the drug wars, racist to the core, 8-to-1 disparity of arrest rates between black and white people, and similar use rates. I mean, it's just a total fucking social travesty. But anyway, so so DC is just a real important spot to activate in. So anyway, so Catharsis on the Mall was born 3 years ago. MAPS and local burners, and some other awesome forces basically made like a kind of a regional burn festival right on the National Mall around the memorial. Initially, like on Veterans Day and Veterans Day weekend, to heal trauma. The first one was very explicit about healing the trauma of the drug war, and we had to burn a temple with a cell, like a human figure in a cell, representing all the souls lost to the drug war, all the families shredded, and but then dance through the night, and it was beautiful. And it's incredible freedom to be doing this like right on the mall, and it's amazing testament to our activist partners in DC that we were able to do this. Actually, a funny story is that there was like a kind of fundamentalist Christian vigil for like 6 months, this King David tent, for like all these like 24/7 people praying and holding vigil to get this wayward nation, back on the Christian path, and coming over to check out our stuff, and like crazy burner art, and explaining, hey, the drug wars were really fucking hard and terrible, and and they're like, well, have you heard of Jesus? And and I'm like, whoa, man, you have no idea what's about to hit, and just had this like rockin' party, as they're like, anyways, but hopefully, educated. And what's also really sweet is that, Burning Man's is way out in the middle of nowhere, but here we're interacting with all kinds of regular people. And then last year, it was like healing from trauma. It was the theme, kind of a MDMA, PTSD, veterans theme. And, of course, no one fucking saw it coming, but fucking Trump got elected. And, so now there's a whole other level of trauma, like the Veterans Day, like immediately following Tuesday, election day. So that was just really important, like just space in the city to operating and holding space for it, processing and releasing catharsis, just really releasing trauma of the year. So then this year we did, and when I say, mostly not me personally, but the local activists and catharsis peeps did a still healing trauma, but it was particularly women's liberation focused. And what was it? Restoring, man, I'm just blanking on the theme. Healing, something about restoring balance and healing the world and just coming to center. So it was like this really healing, in the zeitgeist, like really reflecting like all this rage and power that's just kind of emanating right now from women, like all these fucking men harassers just like tumbling one after one, there's this de-repression of the patriarchy that's, an ongoing process, but we're going to, speeding up. And you can feel that in the LGBTQ and the women's liberation. And so the original centerpiece of the festival was going to be Our Evolution, which is this 45-foot tall, amazing image or sculpture of a woman in mountain pose, nude woman in mountain pose. And she was going to face the White House. And, it's going to be so super dope, facing Trump in this moment and just holding space. But it got politicized, it got massive media, and everyone's talking about it. And, and this total stupid double standard. I mean, some media were doing it right, but a lot were like, oh, how the naked lady is supposed to empower women, and just stupid shit. Anyway, so our permit got yanked, got all politicized. So then this rad lady in our world and the ladies in the world of catharsis came together and all pose hand over heart, hand below heart in this beautiful pose. And our artist friend Marty Kinney created this 27-foot tall mural of this goddess composite of all the ladies of catharsis, and just like we built a scaffolding so we can do unpermitted 27 and a half feet tall. So we did exactly that. Scaffolding is right in the middle of the Washington Mall with this like incredible goddess holding space. And Abraxas the Dragon, our car, was there blasting its next level sound system. And then for the burn this year, like we brought out a lot of, like we sponsor the MAPS camp. Like we're basically sponsoring Zendo. So Zendo does psychedelic harm reduction on Playa. And so that's what we do every year. And so this year our theme was gender liberation and psychedelics. So we had this rad installation of Nada Raja, like an artist in our world, Emma, I'm blanking on her last name, but Emma, she does like next level paper mache sculpture. So Emma is dope and is going to keep creating awesome stuff for forever. Emma Hardy, and my phone for the record.
Emma Hardy.
Emma Hardy is this rock star that created both, and then her assistant Jay created this amazing Nada Raja sculpture. So an 8-foot tall, the incarnation of Shiva in his Lord of Dance, their Lord of Dance, her Lord of Dance pose, uniting all opposites in the fires of creation, the dance of creation, and it's bigendered, and it's kind of a symbol of Tao of self. It's a big symbol of all opposites reconciled, and we were in, the model was a hijra, so it's the third gender of India, transgendered societal gender, recognized, now scorned but formerly revered. Like now it's like unfortunately mostly sex workers, but in past times were very much revered. And so anyway, so we had Nada Raja holding space with like prayer flag bandanas, different colors corresponding to different, like we invited people to feel into how the gender binary fucking straight jacket just is like all these huge energies, and all of us are just fucking like cultural foot binding. When you think of like Chinese, like, oh, they're so crazy, look what they did to their women with their fucking foot binding and shit. It's like, this is what we're doing spiritually to ourselves. We're like, in the male be female binary, and just all of us are fucked up by it. So like, just like talking to people about this and asking them to feel into dimensions of their stuff that have been repressed or underexpressed, and pick a color bandana that corresponds to that, and let's just release that energy and start rocking and talking about it. And then coming into our foam dome, so where you get the naked foam, get all foamed up and then dance. But now everyone's got color bandanas, so that was extra awesome. So we brought that out to the mall. So we had Nada Raja holding space and just next level art. Oh, and because I'm on the board of MAPS and replaced Ashana. So Ashana Haley is transgendered, and MDMA helped her find her truth and rock her truth. And she left $5.5 million to MAPS, was honoring her in this moment. We gave $5 million, not the first. We're matching her. So we're just asking other people to match her. We're doing it. Come on, everybody, let's do it. We need another 20 mil. And and we're fast getting there. But it was honoring Ashana, and then also we honored Nick Sand, who passed in Nick's, of course, mystic chemist. I didn't really know him, but all of a sudden, whoa, just watched Sunshine Makers, whoa, and just realized what a cat, mystical, Albert Hoffman level mystic chemist, and manufactured 250 million hits of LSD and Orange Sunshine. But he had this rad account of a DMT experience where he just becomes a just full-on female belly dancer, temple guardian, love, dakini being, and just fully in this love bliss space as a woman. And then he's coming down, and he's like, am I her or am I a dude? You know, like he doesn't know, but if I die right now, it's fine. You know, like I just touched it. I touched source, and this is a beautiful account of this complete like, but just honoring Nick and his vision and power and his presence. But with that too, you know, just like saying like, hey, here's like one of our fucking godfathers, you know, laying it down, like, let's liberate, you know, and this is like a huge part, I mean, of what psychedelics can do. I mean, liberation in every direction. And a lot of us, you know, myself, you know, I'm like 20% girl, you know, I'm like, with like our transgender, you know, brothers and sisters, you know, I've had to fucking rock their truth in a much more difficult way, whereas I'm able to pass, you know, but like there's a real cost to passing, and all of us pass, you know, and like, just like, fuck no, just, you know, we need to change this world, and celebrating our brothers and sisters are doing it. We had a map of the world of like the 150 cultures that aren't us, that recognize more than two genders, and, you know, like just really cool stuff. And then like Stonewall riots, like call out, and all the giants for standing on. And so this really cool installation, and Buddy Ariel and their camp, Gender Blender, which is dope. And honoring kind of sisters, and yeah, it was super extra special. So anyways, we brought a lot of that installation and infrastructure out to the mall, and, you know, just rock that, and it was super awesome.
That whole thing about being trapped in the binary, I saw Martine Rothblatt. Martine Rothblatt founded digital television when she was a man, and then she had a sex change, and now she's the richest woman in the world, I guess, or like the richest female CEO. And she wrote a book about how the gender binary is apartheid. And I was like, that's, you know, as one of my earliest memories is being denied the opportunity to learn how to tie my shoes by these girls in preschool who decided they were only going to teach other girls how to tie their shoes, and like,
yeah,
and being like, that's bullshit. Clearly that's bullshit.
Yeah, dude.
So I mean, it's just you break out of that finite game of there's going to be a winner and a loser, and the pendulum has to swing back to like women ruling the world, and it's like, so we're just going to go from one system that, you know, marginalizes everyone outside of this imaginary binary to another one that gives these people, you know, that those people in India, they still have to be, you know, living in the gutter, doing the jobs no one wants. Anyway, I'm impressed is the point. I'm impressed with political engagement as a life art, as a pastime.
No, absolutely, man. That's it. I mean, it's life hack. I mean, that's what we're realizing for the burn. Like, we're spending a lot of resources, so we need to bring a more kind of edgy activist element to it. And to that point of like the patriarchy oppresses men as much as women. Well, obviously women way more and fuck horribly here, but we're fucked up too by it. You know, and, you know, don't be gay, don't be girly. You know, all the ways that we're like socialized early to like deny and repress, and don't wear pink or fucking fabulous shit generally. And I'm talking like we as in more straight identified cis male. Right. But yeah, right, of course, you know, women are not like without flaws. I don't mean to erect a matriarchy to replace a patriarchy. That'd be fucking way better. But yeah, we'll let it swing that way, and then we'll meet in the middle later.
Yeah, or there's another dimension. We could be swinging around and not just back and forth, right? You know, could be rolling it together.
Be a big smoothie, my friend. Like ketamine smoothie.
Gender blender, yeah. Dude, this is super cool. We've passed an hour out of respect for your time because, you know, you're running a major operation over there. I want to give you an opportunity before we sign off on this chat to, at the end of most of these, I ask if this is going to be dug up out of a hard drive that somebody finds like Planet of the Apes style, like countless years from now. These people are really curious about what it was like to be alive right now, and that's why they're listening to this podcast. So like imagining that you actually have a message to offer people that aren't born yet, that you'll never get to meet, what would you say? What would you ask? What do you hope that you're able to transmit down the ages to these folks?
Toilet paper. Hoard toilet paper. No, that's actually I forgot the show, and you know, like in the apocalypse, you know, that's like the message back. Like, tell them, hoard toilet paper. No. Well, so I'm talking to the future.
Oh yeah.
Okay, the future. Yeah. Well, you know, rock it hard. You know, struggle, sing, dance, play till we're all one. You know, you got to struggle for fucking shit, struggle for freedom, but live life fully and try to feel the flow and the Tao and your intuitions and let that. I'm talking to myself now, actually. Yeah.
I think most of us do that. I think that's why it's an interesting exercise.
Yeah. So, you know, just try to be more in tune with the deeper currents. They're there all the time, you know, and just, spending more time in flow versus off center. Easier said than done, but yeah.
Right on, dude. David, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Right on. Thank you, Michael. Beautiful.
Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Future Fossils is part of the Mind Pod network, along with Third Eye Drops, the Astral Hustle, Synchronicity Podcast, and an oodle of other fascinating programs. I encourage you to go to mindpodnetwork.com and subscribe to them all. And stay tuned, because we have some awesome episodes coming up on Future Fossils, including science fiction professor Barry Vacker, futurist journalist George Dvorsky, media theorist Douglas Rushkoff, visionary artist Archon Nair, and many more. So stick around and have a most excellent eon.